This is the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, where we talk with martial arts practitioners about their histories and the influence their practice of martial arts has on their lives. You are listening to the free version of this podcast, which is abbreviated. Help support this program by considering to subscribe to us on Patreon and access the full-length version of the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcasts, all for the price of one coffee shop coffee per month. Go to www.patreon.com/malmag. That's www.patreon.com/malmag. Welcome to this week's episode. My guest today is Ian Gauldie, who is the senior instructor at the Combat Academy School of Martial Arts in the United Kingdom. I first met Ian through a mutual friend, Paul McCarthy, who had brought him to visit, and Ian had come by the Inosanto Academy of Martial Arts, where I got a chance to sit down and have a chat with him. He's a man of large personality and big smile, and I'm sure you will enjoy hearing him in this podcast. So sit back and enjoy. All right, welcome to the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast. I am Malmag's Tim Becker, and today I've got a guest all the way from United Kingdom. And so we're going to learn some interesting things about history of sort of martial arts in the UK, at least as far as like Asian martial arts, or at least from maybe from the 80s on, and kind of what's going on there, and some interesting things about martial arts in the United Kingdom. And may I introduce Ian Gauldie.
Hey, Tim.
So I think I will, instead of talking and telling everyone about you, I figured it's probably better that you tell us about yourself. What do you currently run a martial arts school in the UK?
Yeah, I do. I'm the senior instructor and owner of Combat Academy UK. We run classes in jiu-jitsu, primarily jiu-jitsu based theory classes, but we have kickboxing and striking, and we mix things up a little. And we're 30 years old on September the 4th this year, actually. Wow. So we've been around a long time. We're definitely survivors in the UK, because it's quite a big popular market in the UK
for martial arts.
Oh yeah, and we've been around a long time, and we're currently running at around about 700 members. We have a lot of.
That's huge.
It's big. Yeah, it's big. Yeah,
I mean, that's huge.
I teach full time. I haven't always taught full time. In fact, I've done it a couple of times in my life, but I more recently went back 4 years ago and started to teach full time. Really, because I had to, because
Wow.
The numbers were the fact that I wasn't really. I had the whole kind of job thing, but I wasn't really doing one or the other at that time. I felt much justice, so yeah, I went back to it. But yeah, we're busy and we're popular, and yeah, it's going well.
That's on us. So what kind of job did you have in addition to that before?
Well, I was running an HR department, a human resources department for a local authority, which was Windsor and Maidenhead Council, and I was responsible in the leisure department for about 140 staff. So yeah, it was a proper job. But during that time, over the last few years, in that role and other jobs that I've done, I've always been running the classes alongside that, like I said, for 30 years. So I've always had a very busy life, because I would be working during the day and I'd be doing the whole office thing and meetings and all that stuff that goes along with it, and then after work I'd be tailing it over to the classes to teach the classes. So yeah, I've always been sort of very busy in that way.
Wow. So I can say, just from my experience in the United States, this, we're kind of the entrepreneurial spirit kind of country, and the idea of someone sort of opening up a martial arts school and that being what they do for a living would not be considered unusual in this country. What about UK? Is it unusual to have that as your primary, like the thing that you do that actually, puts food on the table and pays the rent and that sort of thing?
Well, I think it was when I started it. I mean, certainly in 1989 when I started, there were very few. Certainly in the area that I am, there were very few instructors that one were teaching martial arts. We had Neville Ray was a very prominent Lao Gar instructor in the UK, and in my area there was kind of him and me. So at that time, most certainly it was. But there's been since then a huge explosion of martial arts clubs and organisations, and in particular the full-time schools. So it's very much like what you see here in the States and in LA in particular. You get the full-time martial arts academies, whereas at that time in England it was very much about people were hiring areas, maybe in sports centres, leisure centres, community centres, and they still do that, and they were sort of teaching just on an hourly sort of day-by-day basis.
Almost like a special program, kind of like the YMCA would do here, or so you go in and you got all these things, and then karate is one thing you can choose.
Right, yeah. So that was, back then that was, a huge, the most way that it was done. But now there's a lot of full-time schools where you're sort of going in and you're joining, and you're, pretty much similar to the Inner Santo Academy, but perhaps with slightly less heritage. And they... there's a lot of those. There's a lot of BJJ, and they're good. They're good clubs, but they're well, I guess what I'm saying is they're run much more of a sort of commercial enterprise, and that's been a big change in the UK. I think certainly in my area, every town that you go to has got one that that you can sign up for that maybe will teach different styles. So that's definitely a change in the last few years. Yeah.
That's cool. So you mentioned BJJ, but you had also said that your club was primarily jiu-jitsu. So do you mean Brazilian jiu-jitsu, or are you talking about a different?
Well, my history is in the Japanese-based stuff. So I had an Aikijitsu. The largest chunk of my training was Aikijitsu and Japanese jiu-jitsu based. I trained under George Scarrett, Chris Scarf, Bill Cox, Brian Dossett, Jeffrey Balmer, and a number of other guys in the UK. So a large part of my training, I guess because I started so young as well. So like when I started at the age of 7, so sort of 1975, I had kind of two passions really. One was aeroplanes, and the other was martial arts. And I vividly remember being, like so many guys my age, being hugely influenced by Bruce Lee, because of the movies and the things that his athletic ability and his aura and the things that he said. And I remember being very heavily influenced by Bruce Lee and the image of it. But at the time, really, the public's perception of martial arts was kind of like Bruce Lee, Kung Fu, Judo. That was kind of it. It was quite a limited sort of scope of what people knew about martial arts. And I can remember my 7th birthday, I wanted to go to Heathrow Airport with my folks. We used to live in London, quite close to the airport. And I wanted to watch the planes land off and take off and land, and part of the deal I think that day was that I was going to go to the airport and I was going to go to my local judo club. So on my 7th birthday, I went into a judo club.
But what'd you have to do? It sounds like two things you wanted to do, but I know how parents work.
Yeah, well, you know what? The truth of it was that I don't think anyone's gonna trust me with an aeroplane. I think that's where my parents are coming from. We're not gonna trust him with an aeroplane. But my mother's side of the family was a lot of boxers, a lot of tracksuit soldiers. My grandfather, in fact, trained in the London area with a very famous boxer called Henry Cooper, and he was part of the sort of training for him. So I always joke about it, Tim, and I tell people that my mum said that I had her good looks and she didn't want me to put me in a boxing ring. So it started with judo and went from there.
Nice. Wow. So so it was primarily, was it like Bruce Lee movies, the media sort of thing that got you interested in martial art then, or was there a need, because usually you get a few stories in there. Somebody saw movies or TV and went, oh, that's what I want to do, or you were getting picked on and there was a need, or
I mean, I think at my age then it was just really the whole sort of cinema presence that he had that really inspired me to want to take up martial arts. But having said that, I still went through the phases of a teenage lad where I was subject to the whole sort of bullying and and like a lot of young men, I needed some guidance as well. I had very good parents. I had a very good upbringing. But to have that sort of discipline in martial arts, which I think was very important for me personally, because certainly going through my teens, as a lot of young men and women can do, martial arts will give you that focus. It will give you that discipline to learn about yourself, which I think is the key point for me as I tell the guys that I train now. So I think really primarily it was just that whole sort of movie inspiration of it. I still look back at some of the Bruce Lee movies and I still feel the same way that I did when I was 7 years old watching it. But it certainly led me down a fascinating path, really, that became a whole sort of structure and a guide to my whole life, really. Yeah.
So what kept you in it? Because you know how kids are. I help teach kids classes, and I've been around enough kids. I'm an uncle, and I was very much like you. I got involved young, and then I stuck with it. But a lot of kids, will try something and they move on, and try something and move on, try something and move on. What was it about martial art, or the particular arts you were doing, that kept you in it through, the formative years where tastes change and, you develop the things you like and the things you don't like and that sort of thing?
You're so right, because I think that you do go through these phases, don't you? Not just as a child, but as an adult, where you can move kind of close to something and move further away from it. But you know what? I think that the truth of it is that I sometimes say that the kids don't quit, parents do. It's the parents that will very often, like, I don't know what it would be like here, but I always have this image in my head that there's some kid playing Xbox or PlayStation or whatever, always watching a film or movie, and it's getting ready to go to class, and the parent goes to the bedroom and opens the door and says, are you going to class tonight? And if that answer comes back from the child, no, I'm not, very often the parents will just accept that.
Right.
And I think where I was lucky in that way is that both of my parents saw the value of the classes that I was going to and the instructors that I had. My father was a royalty protection officer, so he was close quarter security for the royal family. So he had a military background and a police, a very uniformed and disciplined background. And I think that when I had, not that they ever made me do it, right? It's like you can't make a child go to class, but certainly you can do your best as a parent to understand the value of it, the long-term value of it, and encourage me to keep going. My dad moved around for his job too, so I used to have to maybe go and try another class and do a different style, which was a big part of it too. And there were classes that I came across that just didn't suit me, and I, instead of saying, well, that doesn't suit me, so I quit, my parents said, well, go and try this and go and try that. And obviously now, here I am in Los Angeles with you, and
right, yeah.
I'm glad that they did, so yeah.
But you touched on something interesting there, and I'm wondering if you think there's a difference between, when it comes to kids and sticking with it and that sort of thing, the difference between what you've expressed and my experience was the same thing. I sought it out. You sought it out. Do you think there's a difference in the kids sticking with it if it's their idea as opposed to the parents bringing them in and saying, hey, I think you should do this martial art class?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel there's always kind of two relationships at work, isn't there? When you're teaching children, you have the guru, the teacher, the sensei, the sifu, your relationship with the child, but then there's that relationship with the parents as well. And I think it's definitely different, like when you teach adults and when you teach children, because the adults are always just, when you go out into the middle of a mat and you say, we're all going to do this, they go, yeah, okay. There's no questioning process of it, but kids aren't like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're designed to question what's going on. They're designed to question, theories and principles, whether that be on an obvious way or just as a psychological, a subconscious way. And at certain ages, they're designed to question adults and the opinions and the theories that the adults are giving them. So they're very questioned. And I think that if you walk into a room full of kids and you teach them like an adult, I don't think you'd keep them. You have to have an energy with younger children, and you have to be able to keep your inner child as an instructor on the mat. So if you go out and you try and teach a room full of you know, 8-year-olds like they're in their mid-30s. It's just not going to happen. So that's a really good thing that I found in teaching children, is that it keeps your inner child awake and young. And obviously adaptation as well, you know, fun-based activities for the kids. You know, you need things that are going to work, you need things that are going to be practical, but you also need to be able to understand that you have to make it in a play-like activity for children to keep their interest. And one of the things that we use in my organisation is a lot of secondary award system. So we know badges and grades within belts and awards and games, fun and games, you know, that keeps their interest. I mean, any way you can keep a child in your class, right, for the benefit of that child in the future, has got to be a good thing. You know, sooner or later, my guys, that they'll start when they're 6 or 7. They'll get into their teens, like one particular man that we both know, and you need to keep their interest. So
that worked out pretty well for him, it seems.
Yeah, we're talking about Paul McCarthy here,
yes.
The British Ninja.
Director of the UCLA Martial Arts Program, which is probably
right.
one of the biggest martial art programs in the American university system. So, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he's also the creator of Cognitive Kali.
Cognitive Kali, exactly, yeah.
Well, he's another example of it. I mean, Paul was 15 when he came to my classes, and he was just a teenage guy, really. And there's been lots of other guys like that. Lawrence Dunning is another one who's in the States as well. Is very prominent within BJJ. And lots of people that come back, I'm flattered and honoured to say, many years later, that get back in touch with me and say, you know, thank you for getting me on my feet and keeping my interest and keeping me, focused on what I wanted to do. It's a great responsibility to that, you know. I mean, Paul he's a very prominent guy over here, and he's a wonderful guy. It's great to get back in touch with him, and he's obviously a great martial artist. And I kind of look back now to when he was 15 years old, and I think, you know, thank God I got that one right. I kept his interest and kept him kept him keen to learn, and that's worked out pretty well. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I to this day keep in touch with my first martial art instructor as well.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, I don't do that art per se anymore. Started in Shorin-ryu, but also kickboxing. So I still do kickboxing.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not exactly the same way that I did back in that time, because that was a PKA type kickboxing back in those days, and you know, it's evolved into there's knees and elbows and you know, other things involved now. So but yeah, I mean, to this day, when Sensei Owens he has business trips to California, I'd say once, twice a year, we're always get together.
Yeah,
you know, it's hard not to. I mean,
yeah, and it's a huge responsibility that as martial arts teachers that we need to be aware of, is that influence that we have on people, whether we be their first instructor or their second or their last instructor, but whatever influence we've got, it's huge. It goes on forever. You know, it can be be timeless, because just the guys that taught me, you know, I'm now teaching others, and they're spreading out. They're all over the world, and it's a huge responsibility. You know, we have to conduct ourselves with that in mind. I think that's important.
Now, I remember talking to you before. You've got some very unique kids type of programs that you do. You want to talk about those a little bit? Yeah,
sure. I took no questions out of bounds. What we were talking about just recently was that I do a number of other things along with the tuition that I'm doing. So I've been over here at UCLA doing a seminar recently where I did a course with Paul, which was an active shooter course, and we were talking about the sort of first aid and initial medical response for people that perhaps had catastrophic bleeds, which I do in the UK, and that's very successful, and it's working out very well. But just as we talked about keeping the interest of younger people that were in the classes, I do a number of other things. I do a junior combat medic, which is where we actually teach children between the age of, say, 7, it's about 7 up to 11 or 12, and we teach them CPR, and we teach them about recovery positions and just, you know, basic first aid stuff
That's
is important
incredible.
to have. Well,
I mean, it gives them a sense of compassion, and I mean, in different ways of helping, right? Not only helping, but saving a life.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm pleased to say that in the UK now they're bringing first aid into the school curriculum, which I'm not sure when that's coming in, but it's soon. and they're going to be teaching some of the basic stuff, is very, very important to make sure that people have got a basic grasp. And we did it just recently. We put some posts up, and we had some kids that were like, we had 2 9-year-old lads that literally during a role play just flipped me over into the recovery position, and they worked as a team to turn me over into recovery position. So that's important, and I think that's an important skill to have. But I think also we were talking about earlier on, Tim, about building in that value to parents, so that parents can see that it's an important thing for the child to be involved in, and then when the parents see that you're doing that, that's a value to them. We just literally, before I came away in my hometown, I did a self-defense and plate awareness course, which involved.
And this concludes the abbreviated version of the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast. Please consider supporting the program by going to patreon.com/malmag and subscribing for access to the full-length podcasts. Again, that is www.patreon.com/malmag. Thank you for listening to the episode with Ian Gauldie. Next week, we have one of the coolest guys from MKG Detroit by the name of Kurt Cornwell. This show is produced by Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine. Visit us at martialartslifestylemagazine.com. Music by Jackal Relic. Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine and the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast are trademarked and copyrighted by TNT LLC.